Hey guys, Sig here. So this is a re-recording of one of the very first videos I made in my ESL series of videos where I basically have a number of topics that I come across in my tutoring sessions with my ESL students about like difficult concepts for them or things that they have never learned. And I realized that I should just like record these things and put them out so that everyone could be able to use them. And the first presentation that I made for this was about colons versus dashes. And I've added a couple of things to it. I think it's a stronger presentation than the first one I made. So let's go. So the first question that you have about this probably is, what function do these punctuation do? Like, why do I have these two punctuation together? Well, obviously they must be similar in what they do, right? So colons and dashes are typically used to indicate some small pause in the flow of speech, or actually writing is what we're talking about here. They generally invoke a sense of emphasis, calling increased attention from the reader to the words that follow them. And they perform functions not covered by commas or semicolons, typically. So why do we pause while speaking? And so this is a bit of a soapbox that I get on sometimes about, like, what is language? Language is basically a vehicle for bringing out emotion from the person that we're interacting with. Like, communication is a connection and understanding of emotions, not of words. The words are what we connect to these feelings and concepts to be able to communicate with one another. And so why do we pause while speaking? The main reason that we do this is to, quote, set the stage for what comes next. You create a sense of anticipation in the listener. The next reason that we pause while speaking is to inject emphasis by capturing a listener's attention. What I mean is you create heightened attentiveness from someone listening to you by injecting a sense of suspense. And another reason that it happens is an interruption or a change in thought. Sometimes while talking, we have a realization or there's some other involuntary change in what you're thinking right in the middle of it, and that causes you to stop for a second and go off on this other direction. And so these are the emotive things that colons and dashes express or communicate whenever you see them in writing. So let's start with the colon. How do you use a colon? The number one way that a colon is used is exactly what I have right here. It's for introducing something, especially a list. And the example sentence I have for this is, the bookstore specializes in 3 subjects: art, architecture, and graphic design. So you heard when I read this sentence that I paused after subjects, and that pause makes you listen to what comes next. The bookstore specializes in 3 subjects: art, architecture, and graphic design. And so I've set the stage for what the subjects are by the introductory sentence and the colon. One common mistake that I want to point out here is that a lot of students will want to put "they are" after the colon, and when you're introducing the list, you just list the list after it, if you understand what I'm saying. Do not insert "they are", just write the list after the colon. The next way that a colon is used is to connect 2 related independent clauses. I apologize if that's really complicated because you don't know what these words mean, but independent means like on its own. It doesn't need anything else to help it. And then a clause is basically a sentence. It's an idea, a thought. And so the example sentence I have is, the town reminded me of my childhood vacations. Both were on the beach. So if you took away the last part of this and just said, the town reminded me of my childhood vacations, period, that's a perfectly fine sentence. It doesn't need anything else to make it work. If you take away the first part and say, both were on the beach, Well, we don't know what both is, but that aside, the sentence is still fine grammatically. It doesn't need anything else to be a complete sentence. And because these two are connected to one another, they're linked using the colon. It's pretty similar to a semicolon in this way. The other main way that it's used is for injecting emphasis into something, like I was saying. So the example I have is, always remember, treat others how you would like to be treated. So again, pausing after always remember, it makes the listener stop and think to themselves, what does he want me to remember? What does he want me to remember? Treat others how you would like to be treated. And then there's actually other ways that colons are used, like to convey time and titles and other writing things, but these are not the problem topics that I'm covering here. Students don't struggle with these. They know that a colon goes like in the numbers of a clock to tell time. So the other piece of punctuation is the dash, or it's actually technically called the M dash because it's the width of a letter M compared to the N dash, which is the width of a letter N. I digress. The M dash is used to, first and foremost, create an appositive that has commas in it for clarity. And so what I mean is, so an appositive is an additional piece of information that gets put into the middle of a sentence that adds more context to that sentence. And this is typically done just using commas. But if the appositive itself has commas in it, then it just kind of winds up looking like a jumbled mess. The newcomers to the party, an elf, a dwarf, and a halfling, brought dreadful rumors from Aberdeen. So the appositive here is, where does it start? You can't tell immediately because of the commas. So using the M dash, it's immediately clear. The newcomers to the party, an elf, a dwarf, and a halfling, brought dreadful rumors from Aberdeen. This is much easier to read than the first one. I think we can all agree. The next way that the dash is used is pretty much exactly like it is here without the commas, just inserting an appositive. The coach's nephew, son of his late older brother, showed great talent already at such a young age. And there's actually another piece of punctuation that you've probably seen that does the exact same thing here, and it's the parenthesis. If you write this using the parentheses, it means the exact same thing. It's totally fine, but the parenthesis has, for whatever reason, kind of fallen out of style in English composition, so it's been replaced stylistically by the M dash. Another application of it is as a brief pause, again for emphasis. It's that time of year again. The cherry blossoms are starting to bloom. And so by me pausing after that time of year again, it creates anticipation of, what time of year is it? The cherry blossoms are starting to bloom. And so it's exactly the same case as the colon that we saw before. You actually here can use the punctuation interchangeably, and it's okay. The last thing that I have for a dash is that it's used to indicate a sudden interruption in speaking, such as, "What are you?" Sarah's sentence stopped short in disbelief. So the full sentence is not, "What are you?" There is something after you, but whatever is happening, Sarah is so horrified she can't even finish the sentence. And so the hyphen indicates that a sentence has been stopped before its end. So the next thing I have here is, if you think you understand, give it a try. I have a couple of example sentences for what piece of punctuation goes here. A new student, a girl from Germany, joined our class today. And so if you said the hyphen, you're correct. It should obviously be the hyphen because the M dash was the only punctuation we saw that was used for inserting information in the middle of the sentence. The colon is only used to put things that come before the end of the the colon only introduces things that come at the end of the sentence. So you may have only 3 things on your desk: a pencil, a sheet of paper, and a calculator. What piece of punctuation goes here? If you said the colon, you're correct, because this is us introducing a list. Only 3 things. What are those 3 things? The pencil, the paper, the calculator. My third example here is, she asked why I didn't wave back to her yesterday. I hadn't seen her. So what piece of punctuation goes here? And the answer here is, it's the dash. Again, it's not a colon because, well, I guess I take that back. You could arguably use them interchangeably here. I hadn't seen her is an independent clause. I didn't totally realize this when I made this question. I intended this to be the hyphen, but a colon would also be acceptable here. And then the last thing that I have here is, it's that time again! Big Bob's Blowout Bonanza is this Saturday from 10 to 6. What piece of punctuation goes here? This was intended to be the trick question, and that this one can be the colon or the hyphen. Either is acceptable in this. So, to recap what we just went through, you use a colon for introducing a list, connecting clauses, and creating emphasis. You use an em dash for making sentences with commas easier to read, injecting additional information into a sentence, or again, creating emphasis. The last note I have here is practice to gain confidence. You only get better at using these pieces of punctuation by trying and often failing. But through failure, we learn. We learn what not to do and also learn what to do when we get it correct. So have someone better than you check your work. If you don't have someone, let it be me. You can send me things and I'll be happy to look at them and send you comments and like edits back and corrections. That being said, the shameless shout out slide. Like this video, subscribe to help me be able to make more videos like this and to be able to reach more people, because that's my ultimate goal, is getting this information to the greatest number of people that want it and benefit from it as possible. You liking the video or giving me a subscribe helps immensely with that. You can also follow me on Twitter at @SigmaIsGreater to see whenever I'm going to announce that I have new content posted. And if you want personal help or you want to request a lesson topic, just message me, send me a donation. I will make a lesson for you. Until then, see you next time, guys.